Hey, welcome to Real Estate Resource. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I really hope you enjoy this video. So last week we went through the process of making sure we were writing a good offer, like, just kind of what the steps look like. We didn't actually write the offer. Today, we're going to write it. As you can see the forms, we're going to go through some of those concepts we talked about last week and actually do it in practice right here. So remember that if you guys have any questions, to please put them in the chat or to raise your hand, and I'll get to you as soon as I can. Just quickly before I share my screen, does anybody have any questions? All right, so let's share away, and there we go. You guys should be looking at right now the middle of the purchase agreement. Let me go back. What I want to do just quickly, since we're talking about writing an offer and the process of doing things the right way, I just want to briefly talk about the BRBC. I don't want to, this is not a class on the BRBC. This is none of that. But I just want to briefly touch on it because I know I sent out that email last week about, the kind of guidelines to follow with the BRBC and how it is not just voidable, but voided if it is filled out improperly. And not only can it cost you a commission, but repeated misuse of the form could put you in jeopardy of your license being in peril. Not to mention, if we're not doing it right, there are some code of ethics violations that could be enforced by the Board of Realtors, NAR and CAR. So I just want you guys to really start taking it seriously. The number one thing that is an issue is that agents are not filling out the BRBC prior to showing properties. That's just the right way to do it. Okay? You shouldn't be showing properties without the BRBC. Please, please, please start changing your MO and making it into the process of having buyer consultations and filling out the BRBC and then going and showing properties. Then you're going to be in good, you'll be in good shape. So, date prepared, obviously, today we be doing it. The buyer's names need to be in there. The broker, which is us, Century 21 All-Stars for us. If you're watching this on YouTube, work somewhere else, it's your brokerage that you work for. The other big issue that I want you guys to be clear on is the representation period. It cannot exceed 90 days. So don't confuse that for 3 months. It is 90 days. So you have to really check your days to make sure that the day that you started on, that 90 days from that day is what you put here, right? So for example, if we were to look up what is 90 days from today, let's just make sure, right? And see, pretty straightforward because March has 31 days, even though February has 28, starts to equal out. So it would still be, it'd still be 429 here. And see, I got to fix that. These are the things that we want to make sure. So just make sure that it is a 90-day period. Don't just assume 3 months from today is 90 days. Straightforward. Now, if this ultimately is a corporation, a partnership, any kind of an entity at all, that continuation period can extend greater than 90 days. Okay? Excuse me. Please make sure you're checking off that this is exclusive. Do not forget to put some kind of location, whether that be counties and cities, whether that be just cities, whether that just be counties. Either one is fine. You just cannot leave it blank. You can't put, all in here, right? Like it's every county. You can't put that, right? You got to list the counties that the representation is good for. If you don't put any counties and you only put cities, you're limited to those cities. So keep that in mind, okay? And make sure that your compensation is in here, and understand that your compensation, once you start working with that buyer, technically it cannot be increased. It can only be decreased. So you've got to be really careful about the idea of increasing it based on what a seller may or may not be offering, okay? So you can go down. You can always modify it down from the original agreement, but you cannot modify it up. Okay. Keep that in mind. Please make sure that you have something in the continuation period here. I would suggest 90 days. Remember that if you get to the expiration period of this is just some things I'm touching on to make sure you guys are doing it right. When we get to the expiration period here, 4/29, if on 4/28 we want to extend our agreement to continue to work together, we can. We can extend it for another 90 days. But that extension cannot exceed 90 days. So if we extend it, so 4/29 is the start date, and that extension it would be the end of this contract, and we're going to extend it. The start date is 4/29. What is 90 days from that? And that's where my extension can go to. And I can continue to extend it as necessary in 90-day increments. Okay, so you don't have to stop working with them after 90 days if the buyer still continues to want to work with you and you guys are still working together well, and it makes sense. Okay, so that's really all I wanted to touch on with the BRBC, because I really want to get into writing the offer. In the chat, why couldn't just leave it for 3 months? Don't know. Who knows? Bureaucrats, attorneys, for some reason they felt that 90 days was clearer than 3 months. I don't know. Okay, so we got some questions here. On a separate contract, is there an extension form, or do we do this again? Okay, can you make a new contract? Is there an extension form, or do we use this one? Date can be the day we have a buyer consultation, because sometimes we don't show homes right away for whatever reason. Okay, so answer all those questions. If you want to extend this, the form is called the Modification of Terms Buyer Representation. So it's the MT-BR. That's where you would modify anything having to do with this form. If you wanted to, at the end of the 90 days, on April 29th, you could write a new BRBC with them. Sure, absolutely. And yeah, whatever date you're going to start working with them, that's the start date. So yeah, you might meet with somebody today and you might not show them properties till next Wednesday, but your start date of your representation period is today, not the day you show properties. Okay. All right. And then quickly, that's the BRBC, which is the overall representation agreement that I can have with my buyer, which means that, it's exclusive and we work and I show you everything, right? But if I meet somebody in an open house or somebody, a sign call or whatever it is, then I would maybe, because we're going to work for a short period of time together, we are going to talk about the property showing and representation agreement. This one is for maximum 3 properties. It's only good for 30 days. It is non-exclusive. So it's a little less, constraining than the other one, but it is specifically for these properties. So I hold an open house. Somebody comes in. I don't have an agent. I'd like to work with you. I'd like to write an offer on this property. Here is a PSRA. We met today. Sign it, and I can write an offer for you. Or if you can convince that person to continue to work with you after the fact, even if they don't get that offer accepted, then you would do a BRBC. But a PSRA is also an appropriate option if you don't want to do BRBCs. Okay. All right. Any questions before I get to the purchase agreement? Anybody? Any other questions? Okay, I think I got everybody that was in there. Jesus has his hand up, so go ahead.
On the PSRA, it says that it's only 30 days, correct?
That's correct.
If we open escrow, it should cover us the period of escrow, even though it lasts more than 30 days, or should we extend it in the middle of the escrow?
Oh, no, there's no need. There's no need to, because it's only for those properties anyway. It's like a listing agreement, right? I mean, sure, you guys have, in your careers, have had a listing that expired in the middle of an escrow. The terms of that contract are still valid because you opened escrow during the valid term of that contract. So if your BRBC or PSRA is going to expire during your escrow, once you've opened an escrow, there's no need to extend it unless you feel like you want to protect it so that you can continue to represent them. But as with a PSRA, let's say you only have the one address is where you're in escrow. If that escrow falls out, that PSRA is no good anyway, so there's no need for you to extend it.
Now, Kyle, since I know negotiations are, once we start negotiation, everything is open for negotiation, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Why are they so adamant about that we cannot increase our commission, but we can decrease it? They're open to that, but not to the increase.
Well, I mean, I kind of understand why they made it the way they did. Look, if I am sitting down with you as a buyer and I show you my whole presentation, I do my whole buyer consultation, my value is what my value is, meaning I am charging X, whether that be 2.5%, 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever it is. This is what I charge. Now, that's what my value is. Now, if you want to work with me, that's what you're going to have to commit to pay. Now, if you say to somebody, what I need you to commit is 2%, and then you find out that a seller is going to offer you more, I understand why they don't think it's fair to say to a buyer, hey, by the way, now you got to increase your responsibility. Because what you're saying is, this is the case, is I have to then increase yours. What happens if something happens during that escrow and it falls apart? Now I've increased your responsibility, buyer, because somebody promised me something. Now that disappears. You still have that responsibility, and you have to assume that or trust me that I'm going to fix it back down again. So the thing is that the reason they don't want you to raise it is because you should have negotiated better for yourselves in the beginning than you did after, right? That it's, if your value is 3%, then you should ask for 3% from every one of the buyers that you're working with. I mean, I get the concept of it, is that they want there to be transparency. They don't want people to be taken advantage of. Sellers shouldn't also. The idea is too is that this whole lawsuit thing started because of sellers. So now what's happening is this. Listing agent says, hey, to you, hey, my seller may be willing to pay 3%, but your BRBC's at 2%. Right? Now, is that good for the seller or is that good for the buyer's agent? Right? Because the seller could have accepted an offer where the buyer's agent could only make 2%, could have saved themselves 1%. You would have put more money in the seller's pocket. But now, because the listing agent says, oh no, they'll pay 3%, go fix it. Is the listing agent doing what's right for the seller? I think that's a question. So I think this is all from them, from whoever's creating these rules and guidelines. They're looking at it from the best way possible for consumer protection and also to try to protect themselves from another lawsuit. The thing that we want to avoid as realtors, as members and as acting real estate agents is we don't want another one of these lawsuits that's going to infringe or change the way our business practice works. So it
Sounds
sucks that
good.
you
Sounds
can't.
fair.
Yeah, it sucks that you can't negotiate it, but I get it. I understand that they're trying to be pretty hard line on it to make sure that the consumer protection exists and that they're avoiding us getting into another crazy lawsuit, which wasn't fair to begin with. Okay, let's move on to the purchase agreement. So, as I do, whenever we talk about the purchase agreement or whatever disclosure regarding agency relationships comes up again, I just kind of go over it quickly. Disclosure regarding agency relationships is just that. It's a disclosure. It is not a commitment to work together. It is not a binding agreement of any kind. All it is proof that I explain to you as my client how you could be represented by an agent, right? As a seller's agent and what my duties are, as an agent representing a buyer and what my duties are, or as an agent representing both buyer and seller, which constitutes dual agency, what my responsibilities and the seller and buyer's responsibilities are, and that I have to ask your permission to act as a dual agent. That's all this form does. That's it, plain and simple, very straightforward. You need to get it signed. Now, I had hoped when they did the update on the forms that they would have removed the agency disclosure from the RPA package, because you all have to do a BRBC or a PSRA, and those come with disclosure regarding agency relationships. And once you have one, that's all you need. You don't have to fill one out every time you do an offer. But then I realized that you're not required to use a BRBC. You're not required to use a PSRA. You're just required to have a representation agreement. And some brokerages and some third party have created their own buyer representation agreements that are not part of the CAR forms. So what CAR is doing, it makes sense to me now, is there still needs to be a disclosure regarding agency relationships. And if we're not doing it at the time we're having them sign a representation agreement, then we have to make sure they're doing it when they write their offers. So that's why it's there. But if you have one already because you've done a BRBC, you've done a PSRA, or you've written past offers, you only need the one. That one is good for 1 year. So you don't need to send this for signatures every time. Okay? All right, here we go. All right. So remember last week we started talking about the idea of just making sure our offer is clean. And part of what makes it clean is making sure that there are no blank spaces, that we're not missing initials or signatures or check boxes or dates or anything like that, or misspelling, okay? So make sure that things are correct. So today's the 29th. This is the day we're writing the offer, okay? So you know what? I'm gonna make Albert my buyer for today, right? So when I type in, and as you can see here, when you click in to this, it gives you space for 4 buyers. So if I have 2, 3, or 4 buyers, I'm putting everybody in here, okay? Now, sometimes you may have buyers that exceed that amount. We have to address that. So you may have to put either multiple names in there and have people sign on additional signature addendums, multiple additional signature addendums, all kinds of things. But we're not going to talk about that specifically today. We're just talking about clean offer, right? So Albert is my buyer. So we got it in there. Now, I want to make sure, come on, get out. I want to make sure I've spelled his name correctly. Did I capitalize? Remember, we're talking about what the listing agent's perception is of you, because their only perception in most cases is reading your offer. So if I set an offer and, I've reversed some names, so instead of it saying Albert Sanchez, it says Albret, right? And I didn't pay attention. I'm just in a hurry to write the offer. Or I didn't capitalize Sanchez, right? I've made mistakes. And the thing is that everybody has made little silly mistakes like this. The problem is that now, first of all, buyer is Albert, which means it's going to have to get changed anyway. Even if the listing agent doesn't realize it, the listing agent might believe that Albert's name is Albert. You never know with the names that you see out there. So they might not even reference it. But maybe because it's lowercase, it's going to stand out and they're going to be like, man, these people didn't even capitalize the names. Right? But then you're supposed to send proof of funds and your pre-approvals or DU or whatever other paperwork that you have, the credit scores, and it says Albert instead of Albert. So now I'm a listing agent and I'm paying attention and I see it and I was like, they don't even spell their client's name right. What kind of experience am I going to have with this person? So before you send stuff out for signatures, please double check, right? Proofread. Just proofread everything. So now we got the name right? Okay, so now we got the name right. Next thing to super be clear on is the property address. Whatever that property address is. So for our case, we'll just use the office because it's easier to do that instead of making up addresses, right? So we're going to do 9155 Telegraph Road. Okay, already here's this small issue. I got a period after Telegraph, which is not necessary, and I should have the period here after Road, right? Let's make sure that the numbers are correct. Double check this. Make sure it's 9155, and I may have written 9515. Okay, I may have written. Now, here's the issue. Two things. This listing agent again looks at it and goes, now I have to counter because they have the wrong address. Or sometimes listing agents are as absent-minded as we are as buyer's agents, and they pay zero attention to the fact that you put the wrong address. Now, I mean, eventually it's going to get fixed. Well, hopefully it's going to get fixed. But just double check. Again, proofread before you send. And what I would suggest too is to those of you that like to have me review your offers or your listing agreements, just, you know, a bit of advice, bring it to me before you have it signed. Because if we need to make any changes and you've already had it signed, now you're going to have to go back and have it initialed or signed again or fixed, and it doesn't maybe necessarily give your client the most confidence in your abilities if you got to fix it because you made a mistake before they signed it. So just a bit of advice, please bring it to me before you get it signed if you want me to review it and make sure it's okay. After the fact, it could get a little dicey. Let's see, in the chat, using the parties feature and add the buyers, would that be better for all other files? I mean, I suppose, but it doesn't change the fact that there are only spaces for a certain amount of people and the forms you're going to have to use. But yeah, maybe. Okay, so we've got that, right? We know, okay, hey, I made a mistake. It's not that, it's 9155. So now we've got the right address, the right street. Make sure that we have the right city. We're spelling it right. We're capitalizing. Okay? It's in Los Angeles County. Make sure it's capitalized and spelled right. Zip code, make sure the numbers are correct. Okay? I know it sounds silly, but that little bit at the top could be enough to get a listing agent to question their desire to work with you and accept your offer. One other thing on the buyer side up here too is please make sure that is your buyer's legal name, right? Their entire legal name, the name that shows up on their ID, because that's what the lender's going to require on the purchase agreement. So whatever their legal full name is on their ID, that's the name that goes there, right? Like Albert goes by Albert. I know him as Albert. Maybe his legal name is Alberto. I don't know if that is true or not true. But if his license says that, then guess how he'd have to write his offer. So understand, right, that's how it works. So do that little bit of work at the beginning. Do that from the very beginning. When I'm sitting down with Albert the first time I met with him, I would have had him sign the BRBC. And that BRBC, I would have said, hey, by the way, we need to make sure that all of our agreements have your legal name on them. So I need to see your ID so that we make sure that I spell your name properly and we put the right name. I mean, it's fair to have that conversation with your client, but do that ahead of time. Do that ahead of time. Okay, the assessor parcel number or numbers, I only think that the assessor parcel number is required if there are more than one. So if for some reason there is a property that is selling with 2 parcel numbers, you're putting that together, whether that's, like, hey, there's an easement, but we want to sell this little vacant lot to go with the house, whatever. We want to combine those together, then include those parcel numbers in there. But that's the only time. But if you're going to do the parcel number, again, like everything else, proofread. Make sure that parcel number is correct, that you haven't juxtaposed any numbers, that you haven't missed a number, right? Make sure it's correct, especially when it's multiples. When it says assessor parcel numbers, where we're including multiple parcels, then please make sure you haven't missed any numbers, because the street address may be only attached to one parcel. So everything else that's going to work through this process with title and escrow and all that stuff is going to go by the parcel numbers. Please make sure it's correct. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. Next, listing broker, right? The seller's brokerage firm. It could be, we'll make it easy. It's Smith Real Estate, right? Okay, Smith Real Estate is the name of the broker. The license number of the broker, please don't leave this blank. You don't know how many times I see offers that come from outside offices that our agents are having me review, or even have closed, and I've looked at it, and there's missing license numbers on here. Now, the confirmation gets taken care of later because it's required to. But again, this is ultimately the only representation I have of who I am as an agent, who we are as buyers, who my buyers are as buyers, that the listing agent's going to see. And if I couldn't even take the time to look at the license number from the MLS, then that's a red flag for me as a listing agent. So make sure that they have a number. Okay? That's it. Make sure they have a number. They are working for the seller. Make sure the boxes are checked. The agent's name. The agent's name is John Smith. Again, all of this stuff is in the MLS printout, so there should be no reason for us to not have it. It's not like it's hard to find, right? So now his number is 02345678, right? Okay. Have his license number in. Check the box. The brokerage firm for us, we're writing this offer, so it's Century 21 All-Stars. We're working for the buyer. Our license number, and you guys should all know this by now, is right there. That's our license number. I'm writing the offer, so it's going to be me. I can't even spell my name right, but make sure you spell your own names correctly, because I have seen that where people don't. And then I put my license number in. Make sure that that stuff is all checked off. Check, 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 check boxes, check boxes, check boxes, check boxes, check boxes. Okay? Let's see. Isn't there somewhere we can plug in the MLS and automatically fills in some of the listing agent? Yeah. When you open a transaction at the beginning, and that this is less about being a zip forms class than it is about writing, and that's fine. But yes, some of this stuff will get taken care of if you put the MLS ID in. You still have to proofread. That's, I think, is where agents run into issues. So earlier I made reference to an agent, or to that agents bring me stuff to review after it's already been signed. So this week had an agent brought me a listing to review for him, already signed by the seller, and he had a listing agreement from June of 2025. Well, all listing agreements and purchase agreements and everything were updated on 12/25. Not only that, he wanted to exclude it from the MLS and do some things with it. His MLSA, because the MLSA hadn't been updated since December of 2024 until December of 2025, he had an MLSA from 12/24, which is completely different than the MLSA of 12/25. So I figured out that the reason he had this issue is because he was using a template. And I know that I've said this to you guys before in the past, but the templates are dangerous because they don't update. And they keep information from previous transactions sometimes in those templates. And if you're not paying attention, you're not proofreading, then you may have stuff that's in your purchase agreements or in your listing agreements that have nothing to do with that specific transaction because it carried over from a previous one because you used a template. So yes, you can put the MLS ID when you're starting a transaction and it will pull stuff in, but let's make sure that the stuff sometimes in the MLS is inaccurate. So if they make a mistake in the MLS and it pulls from the MLS and then puts it into your purchase agreement, now their mistake carried into yours. And if we're not proofreading, double checking, doing all the things that we're supposed to do, then we still have things that need to be fixed. So yeah, some of the stuff will be cleared up because you do that. Okay. So let's get down to purchase price. Let's say that we're going to offer $950,000 for this property, right? So we're offering $950,000 for the property. Just make sure that you type your numbers correctly. That's all. I want you guys to take time. I think what happens is we get so excited that we get to write an offer that we kind of rush through it. And also because you guys hate writing offers, you hate anything that has to do with a contract or a form or a document, and you take as many shortcuts as you possibly can. And I think that's where we get into some trouble. Again, write your best offer. I know that some escalation clauses are starting to reappear again because, two reasons why. Agents have no idea how to value a property, right? So you can't, you have a hard time guiding your client through the idea of the amount they should be writing for an offer. And buyer's agents think it makes the offer stronger. The problem is that it's starting to have kind of a backlash. As a matter of fact, I've had a number of agents ask me in MLS listings that the listing agent has put in, do not submit any offers with escalation clauses. So listing agents are, starting to see through the ruse of thinking that your offer is strong. They don't like it. They want you to have. To have your buyer present their strongest offer, not us have to just chase you down and tell you what the best offer is and all that. I get it. Like, I don't mind. Like, I would rather that you just ask me, hey, what's your best offer? Because that's what I'm gonna tell you. But don't try to take the shortcut of we'll offer you $1,000 over the best offer up to a maximum of, X. Well, if that's the case, if that's your max, just write me your best offer. If it doesn't appraise, we'll go for it. But it bugs me that listing agents don't want to share what their best offer is because it's in the best interest of their seller. So I would prefer then, instead of you writing an offer with an escalation clause, just call the listing agent and say, look, we want to help your seller get into escrow as much as you do. You tell me what we have to do to make this happen. And so instead of saying to them, what's your best offer? Right? Because that's what we do, is go, hey, listen, I want to work with you. I think my buyer is going to be perfect for this house. They love the house. I think we're going to be a good match. We could work together well. What do we need to do to make this happen? You tell me what your seller needs. what you guys would prefer, what you'd like to see in the offers. I'll take it back to my buyers, and I'll write you an offer as close to that as possible. Now, does that mean that every listing agent's going to say, yeah, here, to do this? Maybe not. But we're starting to get into a real estate market that probably, the majority of you guys are not familiar with. Because if you've been in the business since, 2011, the last 15 years, let's say, you've really only seen 2012, you've really only ever seen a seller's market. We're still kind of there, but it's getting to the point where negotiation is important. And I think listing agents need to understand that. Buyers agents need to understand that you're going to have to talk to each other. I mean, that's the point of negotiation. And we have to be able to be in a place where we can negotiate. And so I think that's the problem, is that the agents that are listing agents now that have never experienced anything but a seller's market, where the seller just tells you, bend over. That's not necessarily where we are. There might be still some little sub-markets where that's what's happening, right? Where the sellers are in total control. But we see days on market are increasing. Months of inventory are increasing. I just did statistics for us for tomorrow that I'm going to share in the meeting. And, months of inventory are, except for one of our cities, are all, 3 months or more right now. So that's a big deal. It's not a huge deal. It doesn't change it from a seller's market to a buyer's market. But it does mean that properties are taking a little longer to sell. Right? There's some negotiating that needs to be done. Sellers are, not getting 105% of their list price when they're selling, unless they sold it, listed it for way below market. But properties are taking 30 and 40 days to sell. It's normal. I mean, it's early in the month, so the stats are going to look crazy tomorrow in the meeting because some things are super, squishy because it's only been 1 month and there's not a lot of transactions, so the stats get weird. But you'll see tomorrow for those of you guys that are at the sales meeting. But yeah, negotiating. That's what we have to do. Okay. Close of escrow. I suggest you guys do 30 days. Now, if you are on it with your lender, and this is, again, writing a good offer is the prep that you guys do going in. We talked about it last week. So if I've sat down with my lender, because I did a buyer consultation, a week and a half ago, and we got everything that the lender needed, and the lenders submitted paperwork and done all the stuff that they need. And we've even gotten to the point where they have a desk underwriting done, right? They have the DU approval. And then we say, hey, yeah, we've got everything we need. So all we're waiting on really is an appraisal. Then, yeah, okay, I'll write an offer that's 21 days. Okay? But that's prep work. That's not just, hey, I'm going to write an offer for 21 days because I think it makes my offer better. And now I put all the pressure on my lender to try to figure out how to make it work in 21 days. So if you haven't done the prep work, be smart about your offer 30 days. Okay? That's it. You can always close sooner. You can always close sooner. If everybody agrees, you can close sooner. Not a problem. It's easy. Amendment of existing agreement terms, buyer and seller agree, escrow, close of escrow date to be whatever it is, right? So if 30 days from now is March 29th, and we could close in 21 days, we could say, hey, close of escrow date is now March 20th. You could do that very simply. But do the homework first. Don't put the cart before the horse, right? Don't say, oh, I'm going to write this one so it's 21 days. Hopefully that gets our offer accepted. And then turn around and go to the lender and go, now you got to make this work in 21 days. No. Do the work. Prep. That's how we write good offers. That's how we write clean offers. Your offer is going to expire 3 calendar days after all the buyer's signatures. So that means if I write the offer today, Friday is day 1. Saturday is day 2. Sunday is day 3. My offer expires at 5 p.m. on Sunday. So, if I am now trying to negotiate and talk to the listing agent, one of the questions I'm going to ask is, besides, how do we put this together to make it work is, do you have any other offers, right? When we talk to the listing agent, and when are you going to present the offers that you have? Now, if I call the listing agent or text the listing agent or whatever, however I communicate with them, and I say, when are you presenting offers, Alba, right? When are you going to present your offers? And she goes, oh, next Tuesday, because right now the seller's out of town. But I write my offer, and my offer expires on Sunday. Even though I knew that she wasn't going to present till Tuesday, how does that make me look? You have to think about what the listing agent's perception of you is, especially if I ask the question. If I ask Alba, hey, Alba, when are you going to present offers? She goes, Tuesday. And then immediately submit her an offer where my offer expires on a Sunday. I would be like, why did you even bother to ask me? Now, sometimes listing agents don't know, just like we don't know, right? Just like buyer's agents don't know, so they don't pay any attention to it. But some do. And the more and more experienced people you start working with, the more that's going to be noticeable. And it may be noticeable in the opposite direction. Like, it could be that they don't pay attention because nothing is here, right? And they just let it go and they still present the offer on Tuesday. But what if I put that my offer expires on Wednesday? So they see physically, I paid attention. I know you're not presenting until Tuesday, so I made sure that my offer didn't expire until after you presented it. Maybe I go all the way to next Thursday because might have to go through counters. What if that was the thing that a listing agent looked at and said, oh shit, this guy pays attention? Because all the other offers didn't do it. Even though I got 4 offers, 3 of these 4 offers, I talked to them and told them we weren't presenting until Tuesday, and only one of them sent me an offer that didn't expire until after I presented. What if that was the thing that set you apart? It's easy. But again, it's just little things like that we don't think of. Like, it sounds silly to say it, but it's like writing an offer and getting your offer accepted and trying to get into a transaction is a little bit like playing chess. For those of you guys that play chess, you don't think just this move right now. You got to think 3 or 4 moves ahead. So if I could do that, if I could be skillful enough in the way I handle my offers and the way I present my offers to the listing agent and the conversations, if I could be skillful enough where I'm thinking in advance, like what could happen, not right now because I'm submitting it, because that's what happens. We live in the now. We're so excited that we got an offer to write and then we might have a chance, that we don't think about what happens a week, 10 days, 12 days, 14 days, 30 days from now. We don't prep for that. And so us trying to write a really good offer, which is what we're trying to do here, is us prepping for 7, 10, 15, 30 days in the future. Okay? All right. So 3 calendar days is cool, unless you know that they're not going to do it, so you change your date. So I know that they're not, so I want to do it next Thursday, right? 2/5. So my offer expires on 2/5. Now, initial deposit. The majority of your buyers have to have some money down. I know there are, down payment assistance programs and things and grants and all that stuff that is giving buyers down payment assistance, but they still need to have some of their own money. They need to have some skin in the game. So whether or not they're going to get that money back because they have a down payment assistance program, if they have some cash, they need to put it in. Now, the less the deposit is, the weaker your offer is. Because if we look at, again, like I said, I did statistics today for the meeting for tomorrow. There is not an average sales price in our 5 market areas less than $650,000. So if I'm buying a $650,000 house, right, because that's the average sales price, I'm buying a $650,000 house, and I'm only willing to put down $2,000. Now, on top of that, it's a down payment assistance. I get it, right? You're just adding obstacles. So I get it. But if they can somehow scrape up a good deposit, that's the best. Now, let's forget about the down payment assistance people, and let's just say that we have people that have to put 3.5% down. Well, 3.5% of 950 is, I can't do that math in my head because I'm not good at it. times 3%, or 3.5. I should have done. Sorry, 950. I don't even know if FHA would qualify, but we're just doing our own world here. 950 times 3.5%. So my down payment is $33,250. Right? That's the money I have to have in this transaction. I have to have $33,250. Now, if I'm really want to go all in, I could technically make this my down payment. I can make that my deposit. So I could put all my money, like I'm all in, right? Playing poker. I'm putting all my chips in. This is how strong I want my offer to be. This is how much I want it. I'm going to put all my money in. So now I don't have to bring anything in, just maybe closing costs if I'm not asking for closing costs. But that's extreme. That's extreme. We're talking about like, hey, I'm really going for it. Because that would, let's be honest, those of you guys that are listing agents, if you saw that, oh shit, they're putting their whole down payment as their deposit, that could cause you to start thinking like, wow, this could be a good offer. Now, what I will say is having that conversation with my buyer is you have to understand that what we're doing now is we're putting, 29,000 of that 33,000 at risk if there's a dispute because the way liquidated damages work, but we'll get to that later. What I would say though, that which would be still carry some weight, even if ultimately I get a counteroffer where it's like, oh, we want the deposit to be 3% of the purchase price. I get it, right? You're going to get counters that do that, and maybe in that negotiation, you go to your buyer and explain to them what that means and why you're doing it, and they say, okay, yeah, we could do it. That's fine. If you don't want to write your offer like that, I would suggest that the least amount of money that you offer is that in your initial deposit, $12,500, because it's going to make a difference. It's going to make a difference. Because what happens is listing agents see 5, 7,500, 10, right? They don't see bigger than that. Now, the reason I say 12.5 is that if there is any kind of dispute, then we go to small claims because that's the new small claims max. We go to small claims as there's a problem. I don't have to worry about mediation, arbitration. I don't have to worry about, how long it's going to take us to get the deposit back. If there's a dispute, we have to fight it. So that's where I'm at. So I think that's our start is that. And if you think about it, right, if we sold a $650,000 house, even if it was FHA, their down payment is still $22,000. So this is not even their whole down payment. So they have to have this amount of money to be able to do it. They have it. Right? So again, we're talking about clean and strength of offer. Somebody said, what's the lowest percentage-wise? I don't go by percentages. This percentage that shows up there is just a calculation, like just to show you what the percentage of. It doesn't change by changing that. If I put 2%, it doesn't let me change it. It's the dollar amount. Just look at the dollar amount. That's why I suggest that 12,500. And higher than this, if there's a dispute and you want all of the deposit. So not higher than, yes, if let's say I did a $15,000 deposit, okay? It's only 1.5%, but I exceeded small claims court maximums, which means if I want all $15,000 back, if the seller is holding it for some reason and I feel it's unfair, I now have to go through mediation and arbitration to get that $15,000 back, which means it's going to cost me money to do it, as opposed to the $200 and something it costs for small claims court for me to file in small claims court. So, suggestion is keep it below this, but I would say at an absolute minimum, depending on your sales price, your deposit is never less than this amount. $7,500. I think that should be like, okay, worst case scenario, we'll do it at $7,500. I think everything should be 12.5 or more, depending on what the requirements are of the listing agent. Okay. Okay, we still got a little time. Okay, so that's deposit. that's again another piece that's clean and helps imply the strength of my offer. Now, keep in mind that it's 3 business days after acceptance, right? So if they get my offer accepted today, right? Tomorrow is business day number 1. Business day number 2 isn't until Monday. So business day number 3 is Tuesday, which means my deposit has to be in escrow by next Tuesday if I got my offer accepted today, unless a counteroffer from the seller states something different. Okay? So keep that in mind. And it's a wire transfer. Everything is wire transfer. I'm so happy that they got rid of the whole checks thing. That drove me nuts, So when I got into the business, we had to get a check from the buyer made payable to us, whatever brokerage you worked at. You had to log that check into a book with the, whoever was responsible, the broker or the bookkeeper, whoever. You had to write in what the offer address was, who the buyer was, when you put the check in, and then you had to put the check in that book. You had to make a photocopy of that check and send photocopies with every one of your offers. That was a pain in the neck. And people used to lose checks. I don't know. I mean, for some of you guys that have been around for a while, you know what I'm talking about, and you've seen the checks before. We used to find checks in the parking lot that were, deposit checks that people had misplaced. So I'm happy that it's wire transfer stuff now. So no checks, no handling checks anymore for you, because for the majority of you guys, it scares the hell out of me that you're handling people's checks. And I think they did it too because there was, people were being blamed for things that they weren't doing. We had a number of agents in the past, not here, but other places, that were being blamed for using people's bank accounts because, hey, I handed you a check that has your routing number and my account number. And just a coincidence that somehow somebody got a hold of their debit card or whatever, right? For identity theft, took some money out of their account. We had agents at previous that had gotten blamed for doing that, and they had nothing to do with it, but it was just because they held onto a check. So it's much better for you guys that you don't have to do that anymore. So for those of you guys that don't even know what I'm talking about, you're lucky. All right. The loan amount, this is where we're going to finish, and we'll continue on next week, but this is where we're going to finish with the loan amount. Okay. So in this case, remember, we were going to do a FHA loan, right, which was 3.5% of the $950, right? So don't know how to use a calculator. My loan amount is going to be $916,000. $750. That's my loan amount. Okay. So as you can see, that's 96.5% of the purchase price, which is the difference between the 3.5 down payment I'm going to make. And just quickly, you can see down here that the balance of the down payment is $20,750 because I put $12,500 as my deposit. I'm financing $916,750. So what's left for me to bring in at close is $20,750. That's the math. That's how it works. Now, if for some reason this were a down payment assistance thing or 100% financing, and I was going to get this deposit back because somebody was paying for 100% of it, then my loan amount would still be, this is 100% financing only, is this $950,000, right? Then I would get the $12,500 back, but that's only if it's 100% financing. The down payment assistance programs aren't that, right? So we would have to make, there would be an escrow amendment later that would give the money back to the buyer, okay? In the financing, this is a fixed rate. Everybody is fixed rate. That's it. If it's FHA, I need to check off the FHA box because then it's going to add some different forms to the transaction, which is the FVAC and the HDID bundle. I'm going to show you that real quick. This is the FHA amendatory clause. My sales price has to be whatever my offer price needs to be here. That's it. So if we negotiate and change offer prices, because this is going to be FHA number 1, if we change the price, we're going to have to do FHA amendatory clause number 2 with the new price in there. Okay, so you have to do that. And the other thing that goes with this is for your protection, get a home inspection. That's required with all FHA and VA transactions. Okay, so let's go back to the purchase agreement where we were. Okay, so let's say that we already decided this one's FHA, so we had to check that box. This is the part that all of you miss, both listing agent and buyer's agent. There has to be an interest rate in there. If I don't state an interest rate or I put too low an interest rate in there, technically the buyer could back out of this transaction even if they've removed all their contingencies, because this is a binding part of the agreement. It says not to exceed. I am agreeing to an interest rate that will be no more than this number. Okay? So it's not BPR, it's not blank, it's a number. So here's the thing. We all know, you should know, again, because we've done our homework with our lenders, we've done the prep, we should know what interest rate our buyers are receiving. So for example, I don't know what the rate is right now. Let's just say it's 5.75. Okay, so 5.75 is the rate they're getting. That's not what we want to put in the purchase agreement, because what if the rate goes up slightly? What if it goes to 5.875 after we wrote the offer at 5.75? What happens? Well, technically what would happen is at that time that they got approval and they saw that the rate was, a percentage higher, a half, a quarter, a tenth of a point, a hundredth of a point higher, the buyer could say, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. I agree to a maximum of 5.75. So to remedy that, or to give ourselves a little bit of room, is if I'm getting a 5.75 interest rate, at a minimum, I'm going to put 6 in here. I might put 6.25. just in case the rate climbs up a little bit. It fluctuates sometimes. And so in the past, especially recently, it was a little more volatile than I think it is now, but I'm not a lender. So if I'm getting that, I'm doing this little cushion, this little, the gap between what their actual interest rate is and what, have some room in case there is some movement, that we're committed to purchase the property. Now, for listing agents that are in the know, they understand what that means. But you as buyer's agents have to understand what it means. Have the conversation with your buyers about why you're doing what you're doing. Include it in there. Now, again, I said, there's some listing agents out there that don't know as much as you guys do as buyer's agents when you're writing these offers, and they may counter you back with a BPR. They may counter you back with a different rate. That's okay. That's a conversation you have with your buyer, right? But the problem with BPR, best prevailing rate, is when best prevailing rate when I wrote the offer, best prevailing rate when I got my loan approval, or best prevailing rate when I signed loan docs. Best prevailing rate just doesn't work. And I think, I don't even know if you could type it in here anymore. You can't, because it's calling for a number. It says percentage. It's calling for a number. They're even trying to keep you guys from doing things that you're not supposed to. But anyway, please don't leave that blank. Do that quarter of a point or half a point cushion on your rate. So if there's any fluctuation between the time you write the offer and when you get your final loan approval and you're clear to close, that you're still committed, that your buyer is still committed to the purchase, and that they don't have the ability to walk out. And I think more and more what's going to happen is this is going to signal to listing agents that this buyer and buyer's agent know what they're doing, and they're showing you the truth about where we are with this offer. Okay, so it's 12 already. That went by really fast. So let's stop our share right there. Did my camera turn off? Huh. That's weird. It turned off all the way. Sorry, guys. Well, it's all right. You saw the contract up there. You didn't need to see this ugly mug anyway. Any questions before I let you guys go? Anybody? No? All right, so we're going to continue on with this next week. I want to try to finish writing it next week, hopefully. So thank you guys so much. This will be on YouTube a little bit later if you missed any part of it or you want to go back and review. Again, if you know people that are missing the class or agents outside, please direct them to my channel. There's a library of trainings there that I think could help everybody. And if you haven't already, please, like the videos, subscribe, comment on them. It helps me to get, more exposure on YouTube. I thank you guys so much for being here for an hour and listening to me ramble on. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Go out there and be productive. Take care.